I knew something was wrong the second he looked at me. I was standing in his study, my daughter's small hand wrapped around mine, while he sat back in his leather chair, laughing over a glass of scotch with my brother-in-law like nothing in the world could touch him. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said it. I changed my mind. She gets nothing. Your brother-in-law inherits everything. Just like that. No hesitation. No guilt. No apology. For a second, the room tilted. My chest tightened. My pulse roared in my ears. But I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I just pulled my daughter a little closer and smiled. The kind of smile people wear when they've just decided the story isn't over. Because betrayal doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes polished, calm, and dressed in family tradition. Sometimes it sits across from you, swirling expensive scotch, acting like it didn't just try to erase your child's future. What made it worse was that he hadn't always been this man. When I first met my father-in-law, he seemed solid, principled, protective, the kind of man who spoke in promises and expected to be believed. On my wedding day, he took my hand and told me, "Your daughter will always be taken care of." She was just a baby then. And I believed him. That was the cruelest part, not just the betrayal, but the contrast. The distance between who he pretended to be and who he really was. Looking back, the signs had been there. The canceled lunches. The short, guarded phone calls. The way he kept bringing up my brother-in-law as the future of the family. At first, I questioned myself. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe grief, stress, and instinct were making me paranoid. Then the letter came. A formal amendment to the will. Signed. Notarized. Legal. Final. My daughter had been cut out completely. I remember staring at the page, waiting for the words to make sense. But they didn't. They just sat there, cold and deliberate. That was the moment shock turned into something sharper. Not panic. Not despair. Clarity. If he wanted to make this a game of control, fine. He just forgot I know how to play. So I stayed quiet. I watched. I listened. I let him believe I was hurt, confused, powerless. Because people reveal the most when they think you can't touch them. And my father-in-law? He was careful. But not careful enough. He had built his life on appearances. Reputation. Precision. He believed that if something stayed buried long enough, it became untouchable. He was wrong. Because secrets leave trails. Paper trails. Financial trails. Human trails. I started connecting details that didn't belong together. Old contracts, suspicious transfers, conversations that went silent when I walked into a room, names that kept resurfacing where they shouldn't have. And then I found it. The one thing he had spent years making sure no one would ever uncover. It wasn't dramatic on the surface. No flashing scandal. No cinematic reveal. But it was real. And it was enough. Enough to dismantle the image he had spent decades protecting. Enough to make people question every decision he'd made. Enough to turn his confidence into fear. Still, I didn't rush. Because revenge driven by emotion is messy. Truth delivered at the right moment? That's power. So I built my case carefully. Every document verified. Every fact corroborated. Every loose end tied down so tightly there was no room left for denial. I spoke to the right people in the right order. Asked the right questions. Let doubt spread naturally. Quietly. By the time I sat down with my lawyer, this wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was inevitable. And when the day finally came, I walked back into that study with the same calm he once mistook for weakness. My daughter was with me again, her hand in mine, not as a shield, but as a reminder of what this was really about, of why I had stayed patient, of why I refused to lose. He looked up, surprised to see me. Then came that familiar expression, controlled, smug, certain he still had the upper hand. I placed a folder on his desk. "You'll want to read this." At first, he barely reacted. A quick glance. A dismissive laugh. Then he kept reading. And everything changed. The color drained from his face. The lines around his mouth tightened. His eyes moved faster. Then stopped. He knew. He knew exactly what he was looking at. The secret he thought was buried was now sitting in front of him in black and white, impossible to spin, impossible to intimidate away. For the first time, he had no script, no authority, no control, just consequences. I don't understand, he said, but even he didn't believe that. You will, I told him. And the decision you made about my daughter? That ends now. Legally, morally, completely. My brother-in-law tried to step in, but the room had already shifted. He felt it too. The inheritance. The influence. The carefully managed power structure they thought was untouchable. It was slipping away in real time. And my daughter, too young to understand any of it, looked up at me and smiled. That smile grounded me more than any victory ever could. Because in that moment, this stopped being about revenge. It became what it should have been all along: protection, restoration, justice. When I left that study, I didn't feel triumphant in the way people imagine. There was no dramatic celebration, no shouting, no scene, just relief. The kind that comes when truth finally does what it was always meant to do. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't begged. I hadn't broken. I had simply refused to let a powerful man rewrite my daughter's future because he thought I'd be too intimidated to fight back. Later, when everything settled, I thought about how close betrayal had come to defining my life. It almost did, but almost is not the same as winning. I had walked through every lie, every manipulation, every carefully constructed illusion, and I came out the other side stronger, sharper, and impossible to dismiss. My daughter's future was secure, not because someone showed mercy, not because luck intervened, but because I stayed patient when it mattered, strategic when it counted, and fearless when the truth finally needed a voice. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about his face in that final moment when he realized there was nowhere left to hide. Not because I enjoy his downfall, but because it reminds me of something important. Promises made to a child are sacred. And anyone arrogant enough to break them should never be surprised when someone rises to make it right. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in a folder, in a signature, in a truth no one can bury anymore. And sometimes that quiet justice changes everything.